Welcome to After the Pool, the video series where I share with you my thoughts and opinions on all the comic books that I read for the current comic book week. I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love daily comic book content, if you love me helping you making decisions on what comic books to buy, you came to the right place. Hit that subscribe button. Before we dive into it, guys, check out MutantBeaverComics.com. They got over 4,000 exclusive variants in their store. They got great customer service, top-notch packaging, and guys, if you use my promo code CORNER10, not only can you save 10% off of that first purchase, but every other purchase after that. So check out MutantBeaverComics.com. So with that being said, guys, let's get started with this week's episode. Alright guys, so before we dive into it, remember this is an abbreviated version of After the Poll. These are not all of the comic books I read. In a few short weeks, we will get back to normal scheduling and I'll be covering a lot more books on this video. So today's first one that we're talking about is Plastic Death and Dolls issue 2. You guys might think I'm a little bit weird for reading this book, but I did read the first volume of this about this guy, Edwin, who kills people with sporks, and he's a very disturbed individual. Well, in this book, you'll learn about his childhood, his trauma, kind of like why he is the character that he is today. This book is for $4. It's published by Image. The writer here is Doug Wagner. The art is done by Danielle Hilliard. It does have that very distinct feel to it. It's just like, if you haven't read a Plastic book in some years and then you pick it up, you're like, oh, I remember this artwork. I remember how like grotesque and insane this book can actually really get, right? But good facial expressions, and it's dark. I mean, it is, because this kid or this guy has suffered through so much in his life, and in this comic, you get to see kind of like why he's infatuated with plastic and with dolls, and it all goes back to when his mother worked at the doll factory, and she collected these dolls, and she actually said, "You can have one of my dolls and cherish this doll." And he picks one, and he's going to protect this doll. And he's also going to protect his mom, no matter what the cost. And you get to kind of see what's to come in this comic book at the end of it. This was way better than issue 1, and I liked issue 1. So if you're looking for something like a little bit different, and it's gory and, you know, things like that, I definitely suggest this one. But this one surprised me this week. I'm giving this one an A-. If you guys haven't checked out Plastic, it's a little bit different, right? You might think, am I a little bit disturbed? Is there something wrong with me because I'm reading this? But no, it's actually different, and it's kind of good, right? So I recommend it. Ultimate X-Men, this is issue 5. This book is 28 pages for the price of $5. This is written and drawn by Peach Momoko. Obviously, if you're familiar with Peach Momoko's artwork, you know what to expect in this comic book at this point. And I thought it's well drawn. It definitely fits, I guess, this world of X-Men, right? It can be very dark at times as we get introduced to an adversary in this book, and this shadow monster that's been following Armor this entire time. We get introduced to another mutant by the name of Scourge in this one, or Scorch, I think her name is. And then we also get introduced to Nico more in this book as well, when we get to see like her psychic abilities and kind of what she can and can't do. And this was a kind of a cool page here as well. But the big thing in this comic book, what people have been waiting for a while, is why is this book called Ultimate X-Men? Well, when you get done reading this comic book, the team name is actually mentioned as the girls have come together to form a team. And they were debating on what that name should actually be, and they came up with the X-Men. So I thought that was kind of cool. The book is a slow burn, but it is getting to the point now to where we got enough people to get a team going. We got a couple adversaries here, and I think this is shaping up to be something good, and I think it's going to amp up as time goes along. So I definitely say, you know, I know a lot of people dropped off of it and it might be too late for you to come back. And this, for me, maybe not was the strongest issue, but I still really enjoyed it. So I'm going to give this one a B+, and I'm on board because I really want to see how this continues to develop from very first issue to whenever it ends, right? So I'm on board for the long term, baby. Isn't it great when there's a comic book that just continues to get better and better and you weren't sure of it at first and then you're just like, wow, I'm just really enjoying this right now. And this one goes to Red Coat issue 4. This is 32 pages for the price of $4, written by Jeff Johns, and our artwork here is done by Brian Hitch. The artwork continues to be absolutely phenomenal when it comes to this comic book, and I felt like Hitch actually had a couple pages off in this because there is a point in time in this comic book where it takes place like in the complete darkness. And even though you don't see any artwork here and it's just words, right? Those words were very powerful here by Albert Einstein asking Simon Pure, like, why is it that you want to live, right? And you get all that explanation in the dark. And I thought that was really cool and creative. And we wind up getting these cult leaders trying to go after Simon Pure and actually kill him here. And we wind up finding out, like, who this leader actually is. And it's just one of the founding fathers, and you find that out at the end of this comic book. This is great. This has a nice balance of like dialogue and action, and you're always wanting to find out like where is Simon Pure going to go next, and you got that crazy accent with Albert Einstein. It just continues to get better, and again, I've really enjoyed it. This one's an A, man. I really like this comic book right now, and who knows what it will be like 5 issues from now. Will it dive like well into the future, or is it going to go like a little bit in time? You know, what would you want to see in the comments section below? Do you want to see Simon Pure like in the 1980s or the 1950s? Again, let me know all that stuff. The conclusion to I Heart Skull Crusher issue 5. Not really. The conclusion to the story arc. It got picked up and it's going to be continuing on later this year. So excited for that. This book is $5, written by Josie Campbell, and the art is done by Alessio Zono. Art looks great, man. I really love the way this comic looks. It has that anime, manga inspired look into it. And when you got to see Skull Crusher for the first time, she's freaking jacked and she looks like she'll kick some serious ass. And this book had action, lots of it. You got to see some flashbacks on how Skull Crusher got into the league and why she was on top to begin with. And it's kind of sad because Trini always had this dream, and kind of by the time you get to the end of it, her dream is almost like crushed, right? It wasn't what she expected it to be. And then you wind up getting somewhat of a happy ending just to kind of throw this twist at you. And you're just like, oh man, where is this comic book going to go? So even though it's kind of like an all over the place type of comic when a match is actually happening, and I feel like Josie Campbell doesn't even know herself all the rules to Screaming Paintball, like she makes up things as things goes along, it's still a fun and entertaining read, and it kind of makes it unpredictable. And so I really loved everything about this comic, all the characters involved. I loved how Trini's teammates became a family. This is a great story. A+ for me. You guys, I'm sure this will come out in trade. I think it was announced in trade, so if you haven't read it in trade, or if you haven't read it in single issues, when the trade comes out, please read it. And then let's continue going on and let's see where this goes on issue 6 and forward. Destro, issue 2. This is a 28-page comic for $4. This book is written by Dan Waters, and the art is done by Andrea Bresson. I think that the artwork could be better in this series. It's not my favorite. I feel like the colors are a little bit off, in my opinion, but it's okay. Like, I like seeing the Crimson Guards here. Destro looks all right. There is some instances where it's like, it could be better, could be more detailed, maybe a little bit more polished, right? And there were some cool, like, war scenes that were going on in this comic book. All right. Now, I like Destro issue 1, but it didn't like give me that wow factor like say a Void Rivals or a Transformers or a Duke or a Cobra Commander. And so really what this one focuses on is really the whole I guess war between Destro's weapons program Mars and the twins' extensive enterprises, right? And you just kind of get to see a little bit more of that back and forth in this issue, and then you wind up getting to see kind of like an uneasy alliance. So you kind of get to see the inkling stages of that, and it's kind of like, well, when you fall, I'm going to take your company over, or when you fall, I'm going to take your company over. So it was kind of cool to see that. And then Destro winds up going into a particular place, right? And then we get introduced to another character at the end of the comic. And when you see this particular character, you might have to do some research to figure out who it actually is, but it was still kind of cool. Once again, this was a fun read. I thought this one was a little bit better than the first issue, and I don't remember what I graded the first issue, but I think this is a B comic book. I think this is above average. But I don't think it's like the best. And again, to be the best or to get an A from me, it's got to have some kind of like wow factor going into it, right? It's got to get me really excited. And Destro doesn't quite do that for me. The only reason why it's tied to the Energon universe right now is because he's using Energon, right? And he had that team up with Cobra Commander to get permission to use the Energon to promote or to use it for his bats, right? But besides that, there is no like real connection yet. So we'll see where it goes. Obviously going to keep going with it. It's not bad, but I don't think it's that next level quite yet. Wonder Woman issue 11, 40 pages for the price of $5. Written by Tom King, and the art here is done by Tony S. Daniel. I love Tony S. Daniel's artwork. I think his artwork is great. Here we get to see the Spectre in there, then we get to see Shazam, or the Captain, that's what he's called these days, right? Good and creative panel layouts at times. We get to see the Amazon robot who looks very menacing. And when I read the Task Force 7 book, and that one was written by Leah Williams, I was like, the art just doesn't match with what's supposed to be at stake, right? And here, there's a lot of action that's going on, and you kind of feel those stakes. But my God, this book should have been a freaking silent issue, because it was like Tom King felt like he had to talk the entire time while they're fighting, and this robot would not shut the hell up, and all he would do is like, I'm going to destroy you, click, and I'm going to stop and take your powers, click, and he would say click, and every single word, and it's like, dude, just shut up. Like, you're making the comics so annoying. Why can't we have just action and fighting? Why does Tom King always have to write so much every single time? It's so aggravating. And this book was just obviously very repetitive by seeing the Amazon robot take the powers of our heroes here. And to tell you the truth, this Wonder Woman comic should have came out before the Task Force 7 issue 1, because you have an idea here of now why Billy and Mary did not have powers. This takes place before that. So, you know, this should have came out before that, right? This one for me just didn't make the grade. It just didn't. I just was annoyed by reading it. It was just like, it had some cool action scenes, but just, it was annoying. So I'm going to give this one an D+. It wasn't like the worst thing ever. I liked seeing the artwork and the fight scenes, but goddamn, Tom King, you have to write so much. Sometimes it's not always necessary, right? Do you guys agree with me on this one? Let me know in the comments below. Superman issue 16, 32 pages for the price of $5. Written by Joshua Williamson. The art is done by Jamal Campbell. He also does the colors, and I felt the colors complemented the comic book really well. Nice little flashback scene with Clark as he was pretending to be a magician, which I thought was kind of cool. And then you do get to see Zatanna in this comic also, where she is actually actually powerless. So that was kind of neat. But in this comic, you kind of get to see the after effects of what happens to Clark from Absolute Power issue 1, as he had that bullet that was in his chest. And then you get to see the grip that Amanda Waller has on all the superheroes as they're kind of fleeing for their lives or going in hiding. And then you wind up getting to see them maybe being retrieved by other people that go into the Fortress of Solitude. And then you get to see real emotional aspect with Mercy, as she doesn't have Lex by her side, and you know, she's going through a lot at this point in time. This book hits on all cylinders. It doesn't just rely on an Amazon robot to take people's powers, right? This is just the way you do a tie-in to see how it affects everybody involved in the event, right? And the way it ends up was kind of cool. You kind of get to see the loophole on how you won't get powers taken away from you because you have a certain suit and a certain person is flying that suit. So I'm not going to spoil that, but this was another top pick for me, guys. This was an A+. I feel like Joshua Williamson really has this hold on Superman, and he knows how to tie in this event. So people should take notes, man, because this was a brilliant comic. The Invincible Iron Man, issue 20, the very final issue of Jerry Duggan's run. His legacy numbering is 670, 36 pages, $5. We will be getting a new run very soon. I think it's in October. And listen, out of all the books that Jerry Duggan has written when it's come to X-Men and all this stuff, this was the best X-Men / Iron Man book he wrote. And I felt like he had a pretty good handle on Tony Stark. He had a nice handle on Emma Frost. He created a pretty cool, I don't know if he created the villain Fei Long, but overall the series was really well done, and it closed off all the story threads really nicely, and it left it open for the next writer to come on board. Okay, so when it came to this book, the artwork was pretty cool. I mean, I don't know what's going on with She-Hulk here. She looks pretty high or something like that, but nevertheless, we wind up seeing basically everything going in Tony Stark's way, right? He puts Fei Long in prison on Mars, on Arakko, and he's doing this book signing, and then he winds up doing a battle against one of his nemesis, and I think it was Crimson Dynamo, right? And it was kind of cool. And, you know, you think, oh shit, the guy's not going to have anything left. But then you meet up with him and Emma, and they have one long discussion saying farewell to each other. It was great. It was grand. They truly do have feelings for each other, but obviously it's not going to work out. And basically what Emma Frost does is she takes care of Tony. She means a lot to him, and she wanted to make sure that he was well off. So she cuts him a check, and let's just say it's for a few $1 billion. And Tony is rich again. He has all his money, and now it's up to him to decide what he wants to do with it going forward. And at the end, Tony actually gives Emma Frost her album back that he retrieved to go get the metal that he needed for his new Mark 72 and 73 armor. And so that was something very precious to her. So it was very heartfelt, had good emotion to it, and again, it sets the status quo for Tony Stark to be Iron Man again. And it looks like that he's going to be creating an armor as the next series goes along, and I don't know, it could go against him. You're going to see upgrades as things goes along, and it looks like AIM and Roxxon's going to go against him, but whatever happens in the future happens. This particular issue was probably one of the best issues in about 5 or 6 issues. And at the end of the day, I'm glad that Jerry Duggan wrote this comic book. I think he had a fine run on it. And I'm going to give this one an A-. It was good. And I just wish that the only thing that could have given this an A+ for me was if Emma and Tony actually stayed together. But you know that wasn't going to happen, right? There you have it, guys. There are my thoughts on some of the books that I read for the current comic book week. If you want to see what I thought of on the newest issue 1 comics. I'll leave that video for you to check out. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember, support the local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting, but always remember, read the comics so we can have great comic conversation.